With a pot roast, for example, you brown the meat on both sides with 2 or 3 tablespoons of lard. Then season as desired. Add a small amount.
Last time on the show, I talked to the comedian, actor, and former cooking show host Max Silvestri. And one of the clips that I held aside from that conversation was very specifically about, in the chaos of a cooking show that is recorded live, who knows what when? How much does the host know about everything that's happening on camera and off? What do the judges know? In most cooking shows, how do they seem to know so much about what every chef is doing right there in the moment? And how much do the chefs understand about, beyond just the cooking, the final piece of television that will result? Max's answer, which is about what I expected, is that it's a little bit of everything coming from everywhere. So often there's someone sitting at the judges table, right, who is aware of something that they should have no ability to be aware of because it happened 200 feet from them, and so I always, but whenever you see behind the cameras, you see a million people with clipboards running around. So I just kind of assumed that there was always 10,000 producers watching and looking for those little notes to play later on.
They are, and you're totally right. And why those shows are so impressive to pull off is because you want to both not, their job is to both not force or telegraph a certain type of story or conflict. They truly do want to you have your rules and this is the competition, and let people's natural character come out and get an authentic result. But there are people running around with clipboards with headsets who are kind of watching the mistakes happen as they happen. So if somebody's forgetting about a pot on the stove and a producer notices it, a cameraman is told to go zoom in on that, or the cameraman's seeing it and is do you notice that they don't realize their oven is still off? Or that stuff is happening as much as possible on the fly. They're trying to get that footage, but sometimes that might maybe gets through to the host, but you really are doing this kind of live on its feet. So if you have a half an hour to cook and I have 4 check-ins, whatever, with the competitors, maybe I get it fed to me sometimes, ask him if he's ever cooked this ingredient before.
Having my expectations confirmed by Max, a person who hosted the first food show that I loved and who has firsthand knowledge of the Cadillac of food shows, Top Chef, it was very validating. And obviously, I wanted more of that. And getting that interview had provided me with a nice and smooth and logical path to someone that I'd wanted to interview for some time, Chef Evan Hennessey, a local star who has competed on Chopped 5 times and won 3 times. If Top Chef is the Cadillac of food shows, then Chopped is I don't even know, the Toyota Corolla? I mean that in a good way. Chopped is such a standard bearer of food TV that it just feels embedded into the American consciousness. Contestants on other food shows say they're on the chopping block when they're at risk for elimination. And Evan Hennessey is one of the all-time Chopped greats. I was very excited to talk to someone who'd spent that much time with Ted Allen, who I completely forgot to even ask about. I mean, I don't really need to ask if Ted Allen is as cool as he seems. I know he is. Welcome to The Last Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Little.
And I am Susan, the AI voice robot.
And if I haven't made it clear enough yet, a big theme this season on the show is finding and understanding and using your voice. I became a fan of Evan's TV appearances precisely because of how finely tuned his on-camera personality and explanations were, and I wanted to know how he did it, and what it was like to shine through the gargantuan machinery of a massive TV production. We met up in Henry Law Park in Dover on a freakishly warm February day. We sat in lawn chairs in the grass, and 48 hours later we got another foot of snow. Winter in New England is weird. Anyway, it was a little windy at times, which you will hear, but it's fine.
What I wanted to ask you, I wanted to ask you a lot of questions, actually.
Yeah.
I've been a fan for a long time.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
So thank you for agreeing to do
sure.
this. So let's just first talk about how did you get started in food? What was the beginning of that?
My honest answer, and it's one of the best things that I ever get to say, is that I started cooking because I failed out of art school. I originally wanted to go to school. I did go to school for art rather, and wanted to be an animator for Disney. And I I went to the University of Kentucky, did a lot of art classes, drawing classes, and things like that. Even before that, I did all kinds of stuff at like Northeastern and Mass Art around here. And then played a little bit too much basketball. And, after a while, they asked me not to come back. And then I looked for a job in the newspaper, and that's why I found my first, it was a prep cook and dishwasher, so.
Sometimes when I sit down and talk to someone, I realize immediately, oh, this is going to be a shorter interview than I expected. We're going to get everything that we need really fast. Like, it was just clear to me that Evan had a strong understanding of his own narrative, and it was immediately evident why he popped off the screen when I first saw him on Chopped. And by the way, what are the odds that I would spend all of this time watching Chopped, trying in my head to disassemble and reassemble the way it was produced, only to find a guy who's been there, and crucially, has the ability to clearly communicate how it all went down, running a restaurant down the street from my house. So yeah, before we got to all the cooking show stuff, I was curious how that happened.
We really started out just kind of a cooking job, and I a big part of it was feeding off the adrenaline of it, and I really liked that. And I think I kind of moved up, we'll say up the line, and then bounced over to another restaurant, did the same thing. Next restaurant did the same thing. And eventually I decided that I wanted to make it a career, not a job. So I went to culinary school for it, after which I took an internship, and within less than a year and a half of having my internship at that restaurant, I was their executive chef. And I was a chef there for a little over 3 years, a restaurant in Portsmouth called 43 Degrees North. And I learned a lot there, and one of the biggest things that I learned is that I wasn't completely ready to be a chef. And so I took a step back and took a sous chef role in order to open a restaurant so that I could learn that, with the idea that I eventually wanted my own restaurant down the road. I had no idea where, I had no idea exactly what. I think I had a lot of, ideas bouncing around in my head as far as, a fine dining restaurant, and that definitely was various versions of sort of old classic French, because that's what I had seen so far. And then just as life goes on, that changes and changes. You go out to eat a lot and you're like, oh, I like that idea. I like that idea. You work in another restaurant, like, I like that idea. I don't like that idea. And then, years down the line, we decided, okay, let's make it happen. I think I'm ready to open my own restaurant, which is, I don't know. Are you ever ready? Who knows?
Okay, Susan, can we get the facts and figures on Evan's restaurant?
Evan's restaurant is called Stages at 1 Washington Street, number 325 Dover, New Hampshire. It celebrates its 10th anniversary in March.
So Stages, it's definitely kind of morphed over the past couple of years, but its existence right now is a 6-seat chef's counter inside the kitchen, and then we have an 18-seat cocktail lounge that we call the living room. So the vibe of it is very sort of comfortable, a little bit eclectic, but yet very refined.
Yeah, and this living room addition was fairly new.
Very
right?
new, yeah. We opened June 3rd, or opened that June 3rd, I should say.
Yeah, June of 2021.
Correct, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Was it were you questioning yourself along the way, should I be expanding a restaurant in a pandemic? Or is that exactly what I should be doing?
I think during the pandemic, you question everything you do,
Yeah.
The validity of it was, who knew? But we were actually, what the pandemic did was give us the opportunity to build it slowly and create it and really work the numbers back and forth and see what our break-evens were and see what we needed to do and how just conceptually it would work with Stages. And that was something that I wanted to make sure that it did, is that it fit. It has to fit. And then on June 3rd, which was just right after they lifted the 6-foot spacing rule and the mask mandate, we said, all right, let's do it, and opened it up.
Yeah, that's cool. It's funny because when I was going back looking for which episodes of Chopped you were on,
yeah.
And there were so many stories about the living room opening up too first that I had to move past.
Go back.
Before you get
Well, that's
down
good.
to
That's good marketing right there.
Yeah. That is. I was thinking it must be a good sign.
Yeah.
Since the most recent stories are at the top. Now, the style of food that you make now at Stages, what would you call it?
That's always it's a funny question to answer. So to put a tag on it, it would be progressive New England. I deem it that because our food is all from New England, and progressive because it's always constantly changing.
How do you sort of generate this constantly changing menu? what is the process by which you're coming? Is there like you have like a notebook at all times, and you're just like washing dishes, and suddenly you like think of something you could try, or like how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, you're not far from exactly what it is, except it's not a notebook; it's note cards.
Oh, yeah?
I have like little index cards, literally stacks of them all over the place. And then if you look in the pockets of my backpack, they're just littered with like dog-eared ones and all kinds of stuff. And so it literally is something like that. Like I think of an idea, and it's not always a dish. It could be a combination of like, oh, I like the idea of like charred mushrooms with juniper. Write that down, and then I'll come back to that later. And it's almost like when it comes time to like my like menu sessions, that I take all these ideas and kind of put them in front of me, almost like whiteboard style, and then just start kind of putting the pieces together. It's a big gigantic puzzle. And then the way that I look at our menus here is that every week it's a reassessment. So we make it through a week and then take Sunday off. And then between Monday and Tuesday, you gather the list of everything that is going to be coming from the farm, that's coming off the fishing boats, things that we have preserved, fermented, cured, dried, whatever it is. And you look at that list compared to what our menu was that previous Saturday. If all the ingredients are the same, I don't have to change a dish. If an ingredient is not available anymore, then I have to change a dish. And then that starts the domino effect of, sort of the placement on the menu. Whereas like, if I don't have beets available this week, for example, well, I'm going to do now a squash dish, but does the squash dish work in the same slot like the second course as the beet dish does? And the answer is no. Now you're starting to restructure your menu. So it's kind of how it rolls.
It's weirdly similar to the way this podcast gets assembled, except it's like thoughts instead of like ingredients.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating because it's the kind of food where the process of how it was created is just as interesting.
Yeah.
You kind of, it makes sense that like the seats are in the kitchen so that process can be sort of witnessed.
Yeah.
I'm definitely like a process person. I think every movie I've ever liked, every song I like songs about songs. I like I like movies about making movies.
Yeah.
This podcast is often like very it shows how it's putting itself together a lot of the time.
Yep.
So that's something that I think has drawn me to that. But a particular process that I wanted to talk to you about today is the process of like, food TV shows.
Yeah.
Because at this point, you're like a veteran.
And that means, Chef Evan Hennessey, you are the chopped champion. You've turned lowly leftovers into $10,000. Nice work. Congratulations.
I am the chopped champion. This is nuts. It's incredible. I can't even believe it. The feeling going through my entire body is just, I don't even have a word for it. $10,000. I can bring all that back to my family, to my community, to New Hampshire to say, look what I did. That's nice.
So I think your first Chopped appearance, even if I hadn't heard like Dover, New Hampshire, and like sat up like, wait, what?
Wait a second.
I think you would have stood out to me because I have learned a lot about food from watching cooking shows, which is maybe not the greatest way, but you appreciate people that are very good communicators.
Yeah.
And I noticed right away that like everything you were saying, it was very clear. And the little like lessons you were imparting about what you were doing always came across.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this guy's really good, not only at cooking, obviously, but also at explaining what he's doing. But so when you appear on a show like that, there's a lot of this talking you have to do.
Very much
right?
so, yeah.
So when does that happen with respect to the cooking?
It's all over the place. So I mean, there's sometimes it's between the rounds, and then a lot of it's afterwards. I mean, when you're sort of, whenever you get cut or chopped or whether you win, either way, you've got another 2-ish hours of interviews to go before they actually release you back into the wild. So it's all throughout the day. To give you a snapshot of that, your day starts at 6 in the morning, and if you win, you're walking out at about 9:30 at night.
That is crazy.
And all to make an hour-long TV show that's an hour and 20 minutes of cooking time total.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like hurry up and wait, I would imagine.
There is, and that's one of the I'm not sure which is the most stressful part of it, whether it's the competition or the waiting part,
Yeah. So when you are sitting there and they put you down in front of the cameras. So there's another show on Food Network. It's called Food Network Star, right? And they put all these people on camera and they make them talk to the camera all the time, and that's half the competition. And a lot of them are really bad at it, right?
Yeah.
But what's funny is these people are very bad on camera, but then they're talking to the camera about how they're bad on camera, and they're good on camera.
Slightly ironic.
And you're like, what's happening here? But I think it's probably just the way that the production of it works. But so are they prompting you?
Sometimes they do. And then sometimes they just ask a question and just let you kind of roll with it. And I think that's totally dependent on how camera comfortable you are, perhaps how well spoken or not you are.
Right.
And then just kind of just how the producers want to angle the show.
Right. So. Yeah, because I always notice everyone's always speaking in the present tense, and I'm like, how do they get everybody to do that?
Well, here's a funny thing about that. So this is one of those things you don't see, is that there's basically somebody that almost follows you around, not throughout the entire day, but while you're competing, and they almost write down everything you're doing, and so that when they ask the question, it's like, okay, so you put the chicken in the oven, and then what do you do? And the first thing you do is you stare at them blankly and you're like, Jesus, man, I have no idea. What did I do? Like, oh, you dropped the pepper grinder. And it was like, okay, I dropped the pepper grinder, So that they kind of prompt you to hopefully remember what you did, kind of walk you back through that. But at the same time, making sure that you are speaking present tense and everything, so that they can edit that back through the show with the voiceover, so that as you're dropping the pepper grinder, they can lay that in.
Yeah, that's so funny. I wonder about it doesn't sound like that was very difficult for you.
No.
And so maybe one reason that and especially as you've appeared multiple times now, they're like, we don't really need to tell Evan what to do. He knows the drill.
Got it. Yeah.
But so I can't imagine. I guess I try to think about it from as a person who's very often behind cameras, coaching people on how to speak. How brutal some of that must be with some people, because a lot of people who are career chefs are definitely not on-camera personalities.
Oh, no. And it's funny because there's some of the producers that I talk to, actually, they echo the exact sentiment, because it's like, just because you can cook doesn't mean you should be in front of people.
Right.
So I guess it works for me because I have, the extreme open kitchen, and I'm speaking with guests all the time. In fact, that's the design of the restaurant. So perhaps I'm, more comfortable with it because of that. I've never really been afraid of conversation or public speaking. I guess sort of just to reflect back throughout my life. I guess I'm lucky in that way. But then when you get in front of a camera, I feel it's just a conversation. I mean, the camera's there, sure, but I'm speaking to somebody in one way or another, and I just feel very calm about that.
Yeah. Well, so now it's clearer and clearer to me why you are among a group of people that are consistently being brought back on these food shows, which I feel like didn't used to happen.
No,
but because I've clearly been watching Food Network for a very long time, but it's it sort of entered this phase where there's these recurring characters.
Yeah.
It was really cool for me to see that you were one of those guys who keeps being brought back, and then you're competing against whatever. It's Adriana is one of the other ones that's bad. It's this person's here every day.
I know. Yeah, it was insane. It's when I did the first one, the leftover takeover, I thought that was it. I was like, sweet, that's it. I did it. Exciting, And then, a couple months later, they call you and say, hey, we've got a tournament. We'd love for you to be in it. And you're like, all right. And usually the way that goes is that the words, yes, I'll do it, fall out of my mouth before I think about it.
Yeah.
And so therefore I've committed to it. And, a little bit of that is, jump off the high dive before you consider how high up you are.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways throughout my career, that's worked for me. But at the end of the day, it's it was good. I mean, it was good to accept the challenge. It was good to be brave and to do it. And, and I have confidence in what I can do. I know I can cook. That's the smallest part of that whole thing. It's managing the mental side of it is, in my opinion, the harder aspect.
What do they feed you when you're at Food Network all day?
I'm hoping none of the producers from the Food Network are listening to this. It is catered. I do not know the caterer's name, but it's. You get to eat.
I mean, I
was trying to put that into a professionally courteous tone.
I've heard if you're in the audience at Beat Bobby Flay, they give you Subway sandwiches, and I was like, what?
That would have been nice.
It's very interesting to hear.
Yeah. We all looked at our plates at lunch and said, whatever you don't eat is going to be on that next mystery basket. So you better eat.
Did you feel like, now that you have a hang of it, right, when you go there, do you feel like you have a sense of what it's going to look like when they put it together? Like, do you know how you're going to sort of be portrayed?
That's an excellent question. And I think that having gone through it a couple of times, yes, I do. And so that I go about the timing of what I do slightly different, knowing perhaps how it's going to edit, how they like a little more of a dramatic. I'll give you an example. There was one where I had a dish so dialed in from the second I saw the basket that I was going to finish early. I knew I was going to finish potentially minutes early. And one of the biggest rules in competition is don't finish early. Don't finish late, but also don't finish early. If they give you 30 minutes, use all 30 minutes. And so that I just slowed down. I slowed down everything I was doing. I slowed down basting the meat. I slowed down resting everything, just so I could time it to the last second to give that dramatic, put it on the plate at the last second.
Salt on it.
Exactly. Just so I could give them that. And I think I freaked Alex Guarnaschelli out when I did it, because I was just casually doing something, putting things on the plate. I was just finishing a sauce. And she's like, "Chef, are you waiting for the last second, last 3 seconds to sauce that plate?" And I looked at her very calmly and said, "Yes, chef, I am."
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing, too. I always wonder about on that set is how well those judges can really see.
Oh, very well.
Okay, because sometimes there'll be like a celebrity chef, a celebrity guest on there, and they're like climbing up on the table to like get a closer look.
Yeah.
But I thought it's Mr. Rogers on Mr. Rogers sets, he had monitors underneath the puppet stations.
Yeah.
So he could see that's how his puppets can react to things that are happening.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if it was like, are there like floor monitors under there or something, but it sounds like it's the producers tailing you around, kind of writing down everything you're doing.
Yes. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. The judges aren't that far away from you either. I mean, they're all like, 30 feet away, maybe at most, from the closest station.
Is that an unusual experience to hear people talking about you while you're?
Not at all. Again, thanks to the design of stages. I've got people, not even 6 feet from me that. And sometimes I have to think to myself, as like, I can hear you, right?
Yeah. Are they like questioning? They're like, "Oh, I wouldn't use a sous vide for that."
No, it just sometimes the conversation gets a little personal, and I'm like, I'm right here. Nothing towards me, but just you're going out to eat, and sometimes people have a personal conversation, but
right.
But I think that again, like that by design just happened to help me. Listen to people talk about what you're doing while you're doing it.
Yeah. When those producers are asking you questions, does it feel like maybe they're trying a few different versions of how they're going to like portray you, basically, or does it feel like it's pretty dialed in?
They definitely try to spark a little bit of conflict sometimes, because they try to get you to talk a little bit of trash about your competitors.
Oh, sure, yeah.
There's that, and you're like, well, then they're always, it's like, well, how difficult was that? They're trying to really get you to like, lay into the like, well, I didn't know if I was going to make it. But in my head, I'm like, no, I totally knew what was going on, even if it was, a mistake, it's like I knew how to control it. I knew what was going on. But they obviously, they want you to do that. But with the idea of not turning myself into some sort of dramatic flake, I just, I remain, hopefully in my opinion, well-spoken, professional, and carefully thought through, even if I'm making a mistake.
Yeah. Well, we're always very judgmental of people who lose badly.
Always.
At the same time, though, it's like, I get it. I get the, like, it's got to be like an adrenaline rush. It's got to be confusing. It's got to be a and I can imagine people sort of getting taken advantage of by the heat of the moment or whatever. But that has never happened with you. So good for you.
Thank you. Yeah. Somehow I keep it together.
Let's just do advice for people who are gonna be on any kind of cooking show.
Yeah.
What would you tell them? What do you wish you knew, or what do you know now that you put into practice?
I don't necessarily know if it's I wish I knew, but I think a big part of it is that think of that like. If you're accepted onto a show, you're going onto a show, like you're there because you can cook. So kind of put that in your back pocket for a second. Embrace the challenge and don't be afraid. Bravery is a huge thing. And when you can sort of sit at peace with bravery, challenge, and the acceptance of failure is a possibility, it all becomes kind of an even thing, and you're able to calm down and control the chaos. That sounds a little bit Matrix-like, but that's, truly what it is for me. That
Cooking in bullet time.
Yeah, it's like you're able to slow things down. And then you can simplify what is going on around you.
So, what impact did that have on the restaurant?
Oh, it was huge, first of all, and then it was absolutely immediate. To go back to the very first example, the leftover takeover, is that when the show aired, every time so every time that I made it through a round, that you see some social media traffic, more followers, more, things like that. And then, you get a reservation, here and there. You make it through the entree round, all of a sudden more reservations, more social media traffic. And then as soon as they lift the cloche and it's not yours and they announce that you win, everything just went haywire. And within I would say an hour and a half of winning that first show, we were booked out for the next month.
Wow.
So you want to talk about immediate traction, that was huge.
Yeah, I remember I used to live down near Street in Portsmouth, and when that was on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, it was we can't go anymore.
It's immediate, right? Oh yeah. That's what a lot of people, decided. They're we're really proud and thrilled that you're on TV, but we're also not, because that means it's going to be harder for us to get in here now.
Right. It's true. It's definitely a double-edged sword, but it's you gotta. I think you always have to be pushing for the next thing.
Oh yeah, of course. And one of the biggest things that we always think about the longevity of a restaurant is staying relevant. Mm-hmm. Doing what you can to stay relevant in the market, to stay current in the market, and to make sure that you always have a place that people want to go for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. And if it's because you've been on TV, awesome. If it's because you've got a killer dish that they've got to have, awesome. Whatever it is that you do, you constantly have to give them reasons to come back.
Well, that's our show for today. I had such a great time talking to Evan. I feel like I'm already assembling a list of follow-up questions for next time. I mean, he's competed in front of Bobby Flay, and I didn't ask about that. Bobby. My TV dad, Bobby Flay. Get your head in the game here, Zach. Evan is one of those guys whose career I'm always going to follow, and I'm really excited to see what he does next. So thank you, Chef Evan, for your time, and thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed another episode about food and food TV, and will allow me to continue to indulge my most obsessive interests. On that note, our next episode is mostly about YouTube yoga. Not a joke, that's really what it's about. Have a great week. Stay safe out there.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. This was very fun and interesting.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for sitting out in the beautiful park in the 60-plus degree day in February.
Yeah, oh, wow. Huge gust of wind right at the end there.
There's the drama for you.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, right at the saucing it right at the last second.
Boom.
Yeah.